Introduction to our research. So by definition, you must understand that research is a systematic and a logical process that is undertaken to uncover new knowledge that will validate existing facts. It also helps in solving problems and also improving in decision making and advancing theories. So the purposes of research are many. Number one, research is there to explore a new problem or situation. That's why we undertake what is called an exploratory research. The other purpose for research is to describe characteristics of a phenomenon. That's why we do a descriptive research. The other purpose for research is to explain the cause and effect relationships. And thus we call that explanatory research. Research is also used to forecast future outcomes. And thus we use what is called predictive research. Now, there are several research approaches that we need to understand. There's what we call quantitative and qualitative research. Quantitative and qualitative research. So these are two distinct research approaches that we use when we are dealing with our researchers. All right. So what is quantitative research? What is qualitative research? And what are the characteristics of each? So let's delve in to understand each of these ones at the length, and we're going to look at exam questions that will relate to that. So when we're dealing with when we're dealing with our qualitative research, it's a type of research that focuses on finding to find out about meanings, experiences, and concepts. It involves non-numeric data like interviews, field notes, and it undertakes what we call an inductive research approach. And when dealing with qualitative research, we undertake approaches or research designs like the case studies, ethnography, in-depth interviews. So the differences between qualitative and quantitative research is that the sample size for qualitative is small, whereas the sample size for quantitative is large. The data that we're using in quantitative is what? Numeric, whereas qualitative is textual. And when we are dealing with data collection, we use surveys and experiments for quantitative, whereas we use interviews and observations for qualitative. Generalization is high in quantitative, whereas low in qualitative. The researcher's role when we're dealing with quantitative research is detached, whereas that of a qualitative study is immersed. So when we are coming up with research objectives, we need to understand that the research objectives must be SMART. They must be specific, meaning you need to focus on one key aspect of the problem. They must be measurable, meaning you need to see that they are assessed, they can be assessed through data. Achievable, meaning they should be feasible within the scope of the study. Realistic, time-bound, they should be specific and understandable. The importance of research is that research must guide the process. It helps us in choosing an appropriate methodology to use. Objectives are important in a research because they'll assist us in evaluating the outcomes while we measure the outcomes. Then they also ensure that we are focused and clarity. Research also aids us in writing a coherent report. So if you're going to look at title formulation, it's important that you highlight the key variables, the scope, and the purpose of the study. Your topic must be concise, must be specific, must be informative, must be relevant to the objectives. So when we come to sampling, there are different kinds of sampling techniques that we use. Sampling is simply a process of selecting a subset of individuals from the entire population to represent the entire population. So there are two types of sampling methods, what we call probability and non-probability sampling. The probability are random based, where each member has a known chance of being selected. Examples we have simple random sampling, stratified sampling, systematic sampling, cluster sampling. For non-probability sampling methods, here chances are unknown of being selected. They are not even. Examples are convenience sampling, we have purposive sampling, snowball sampling, and quarter sampling. Now, if I may to ask, of these sampling methods here, can you describe any of them that you're aware?
One that I'm aware of.
Yes,
purposive sampling.
purposive sampling. Yes.
Yes. Then there's also systematic sampling and simple random.
Right. So the features embedded in probability sampling involves each member having an equal chance. So which reduces biasness and enables statistical inference. So random sampling enables a complete sampling frame to have a list of all population parameters. Now, there are different types of probability sampling that we need to know. There's what is called simple random sampling, there's what we call stratified sampling, systematic sampling, cluster sampling. So when we're dealing with simple random sampling, this is a sampling method where each member has an equal chance of what? Of being selected. All right? Simple random sampling, each member has an equal chance of being selected. And the selection is made through what? Through sampling methods like the lottery, random number generators. So names can come from a hat. So each member has an equal chance of being selected. Then we have stratified sampling, where you first divide the group in what is called strata. The group is divided into a commonality, where they are divided into common ground like gender, income, and then a simple random sample is conducted. So stratified sampling is one which ensures that you have representation from all departments. You can pick top management, middle management, and lower management. Then systematic sampling is one where you have a fixed interval where each and every case member has a regular interval. For instance, you have 100 bikers, you want to pick every 10th. So it's easier to implement than simple random sampling. All right, what other sampling methods have we talked about? What other sampling methods have we talked about? There's also cluster sampling. What is cluster sampling? It's a method. Who wants to try? Okay, so cluster sampling is where you divide the population into clusters, usually based on geography or institutions or schools, where you pick the entire cluster. So it's useful when you need the complete population, not just individuals in there. So if you want to collect head teachers in the whole country, so if there are 20 in Northern Province, 10 in Southern Province, so if you're going to pick, you can randomly select any 5 provinces you're going to pick. So the entire province is called a cluster.
What's the other term for cluster sampling?
Is there another term that you know?
I was looking at the explanation.
It's a little bit similar to quota sampling, but quota is something else. It's under non-probability sampling. All right. So we also have non-probability sampling methods where we're going to select individuals on methods that do not have equal chance of selection. So non-probability sampling method, not all members have equal chance of being selected. It's usually used due to time and cost constraint. The features are that it's cheaper to implement, there's high risk of bias, and the results not be generalized. So examples of non-probability sampling, there's convenience sampling, where participants are selected based on ease of accessibility. It is fast and cost-effective. Examples could be surveys at a shopping mall. Conveniently, you want to choose respondents because you stay in Avondale. We have purposive sampling method. We have snowball sampling method. So each of these ones have characteristics. Okay, so what are the characteristics of snowball, of purposive sampling? Under purposive sampling, you intentionally select participants based on characteristics that are relevant to a specific research. For instance, if you want to select people who have experienced COVID, so you're going to purposively select people because they have a certain criteria. So it is used in qualitative where specific insight is needed. Example, selecting experienced officers in the procurement department. A snowball, like a snow grows from a small to a big quantity. It is used when pre-existing information is insufficient, where you want people to recruit future participants. One corpse used to investigate a theft. You ask who knows who knows who. It is useful when there's hard to reach or hidden information populations. The researcher will start with maybe one HIV positive individual, then refers to others. And also what we call quota sampling. Quota sampling, you divide the population into subgroups, like stratified sampling. So here you predetermine a number, which we call a quota. It is selected from each category. So for instance, you would want to choose ages from 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15. Okay, those are quotas. So each category is non-random. So you can now survey maybe men and women, regardless of how many they are or how they're related. So that is quota sampling. Are we together? So these are the sampling methods that you must know of in research. Okay, then we go to the other important aspects, which is called proportional stratified sampling. Proportional stratified sampling is where the population is divided into strata, like schools and department, and the samples taken from each stratum. The formula is total population times sample size over the population of the stratum. So we now go to characteristics of a good sample. A good sample must be representative. A good sample must have adequate sample size. It must be random, meaning every member should have fair chance of selection. All right, so how do we determine sample size? We can use different methods to determine sample size. Quantitative research, we can use statistical tables and formulas like the uh, Crochan's method or software. And qualitative, it depends on data saturation, okay? The point at which no new data can be gained. And then we go to a conceptual framework. What is a conceptual framework? It is a visual narrative of the relationships between the variables. It has dependent variables, which is a cause, for instance, digital advertising. And we have the dependent variable, which is the effect, like growth. We have mediating variables, which look at how the relationship may be influenced. So a diagram shows arrows of these relationships. So this is found in the second chapter. Then research has a standard reporting standard of the dissertation. Chapter 1 has introduction of the study, statement of the problem, objectives could be general and specific, research question and hypothesis, justification and significance, scope and limitation. The second chapter looks at the reviewing existing theories and studies, we identify the knowledge gaps and theoretical framework. Chapter 3 has research design, population sample and sampling techniques, data collection methods, data collection techniques and ethical considerations. Data analysis, you have presentation of raw data, interpretation of findings, and linking the results into objectives. Then chapter 5 is discussion, where you're going to analyze the findings of the context of the literature and explain the patterns. Chapter 6, you have conclusions and recommendations, where you're going to give a summary of findings, practical recommendations, and suggestions for the future. So regardless of the institution you're at, this is very important to guide you in the flow of how the report will look like. Now, a report has variables. There are what we call dependent variables, which are input variables, and we have dependent variables, which are effect or outcome. So control variables are variables that are held constant to prevent bias. Intervening variables, these are variables that come in between the dependent and independent variables. In research, we have what we call a code book. It's a table in data analysis that is used to define the variables and their codes. It helps to simplify your data entry and cleaning of your tables, standardizing your interpretation. It facilitates you having to enter into a software called SPSS or Excel. The code book can have the following. For instance, you want to code gender. So in this study, for instance, you want to analyze biological sex of a respondent. One is equal to male, two is equal to female. Year of study, we can have one first year, two second year, three third year. That is all coding. Then you also need to understand key concepts in sample size estimation. Capital N stands for the total population size, which is the total number of people in a group. N is a small sample size you are looking for. The confidence level is simply the likelihood that the sample will represent a population. Usually we choose 95%. The margin of error is simply the acceptable error within which we are able to accept the results. So using online calculators, we use these key terminologies. Are we together? And we go to ethical considerations. What are ethical considerations and how are they used? So in research, we have ethical norms that we need to adhere to. So ethics in research are fundamental principles that will guide us as researchers to conducting an honest and respectful and responsible investigation. They will ensure that the rights and the dignity and the welfare of participants is protected. Some of the ethical considerations that we look at are number one, informed consent. Under informed consent, we have a crucial element in research. This means the participants are fully aware of the purpose of the research, the procedures involved, and any potential risks or benefits, and the right to refuse or withdraw at any time. So the consent must either be, when you're dealing with voluntary, to assure that these people are not coerced. The people are informed. It means it's based on clear and understandable information, then documented, usually through a signed consent form. Confidentiality, what does it mean? That when you are doing your research, it involves information collected from participants as key and private. It should be used for the intended purpose of research only. So it should include use of cutting data from unauthorized access, that you should store data securely, not only disclosing any information unless it is expressly agreed upon. Anonymity. Anonymity means that the identity of research participants is completely unknown. Even the researcher in some cases should not be known. So in the study anonymous, there are no names that are supposed to be mentioned. We need to identify participants with code. In voluntary participation here, it ensures that individuals in the study will join without being forced or influenced unduly. Then we go to data collection tools. Data collection tools are important because they look at what? The key core of how data has been collected. They look at the processes that are involved in you getting information, either from primary or secondary sources. So the selection depends on the research design and the population. So the type of data that you need, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. So we have three types of data. We have what we call primary data. What is primary data? Primary data is first-hand information collected by the researcher. So this data can be collected through surveys, interviews, observations, and focus groups. The advantage is that it's what? It's current and specific to the problem. It can be controlled in terms of quality, only that it is time-consuming and costly and requires what? A lot of effort to organize. The other type we have is secondary data. What is secondary data? Secondary data is simply information that has already been collected for other people or institutions or for other purposes. Okay? The sources of secondary data are published books, articles, government reports, organized records, and databases. Advantages is that information is readily available and it is what? Economical. It's useful for having a bigger context on theoretical groundings. The disadvantage is that this information may be irrelevant or outdated because it's for another purpose. and the researcher may have no control over the accuracy and the quality. All right. Then we go to data collection tools. What are data collection tools? The most common tools that we use in data collection are questionnaires. A questionnaire is a structured tool which has a set of questions that will be used to gather information. Okay. Any questions so far?
Okay. For now, it's a matter of just going through again the script just to make sure that things stick.
Right. For questionnaires, we have closed-ended and open-ended questionnaires. The closed-ended questionnaires have multiple choice, yes or no answers. They have a Likert scale. These ones are used in quantitative studies. The open-ended, these ones are used in what? In qualitative research for research, richer data. So the benefits are as follows. For a questionnaire, it's easy to distribute to a large population when responses are standardized. The limitation is that it may limit the depth of responses if you're going to give them yes or no responses. And also, there's a risk of low return if self-administered because you're not there. So we also have an interview guide, which is a tool used to conduct what? Interviews in a systematic manner. So interviews can be structured, semi-structured, or unstructured. What are structured interviews? They have the same questions in the same order. Semi-structured, they are guided but flexible. Unstructured, the conversation is just all over. The benefits for interviews that they will give you rich, detailed data and will clarify possible areas in the process. The only limitations are that it's time intensive and potential biases from the interviewer because you may ask questions that you want to hear. And we also have an observation list. Typically, you're watching and recording behaviors of events. So you have different kinds of observations, what we call participant and non-participant observation. Participant observation, you become part of the setting, whereas non-participant, the researcher will remain separate. Advantages of using an observation is that real-time data is collected in a natural setting. It is useful.
Adjust the screen so that I can see the notes.
So we're looking at here, observation. Okay. So observations are important. What is the importance of observations? And what are observations? Observations are you observing a phenomenon. So it involves you watching behaviors or events. So you have two types of observers, participant and non-participant observers. When you're a participant, you become part of the setting. Non-participant, you remain separate. The benefit is that number one, there's real-time data in the setting. It's useful for studies that will involve actions rather than opinions. The limitation is that there's observer bias and also limited control over external variables. Then we have document analysis or document reviews. What happens in document reviews? It involves you doing what? Have you heard of a document review?
What's the question again?
What is a document review? So document review involves you reviewing existing material to extract information that is relevant. It forms the structure of extraction. So documents are reviewed to include reports, policies, minutes from a meeting, emails, and memos. The benefits that they provide you with historical and contextual data, and it's often cost effective. Limitations that they may not directly align with the research objectives and have potential for incomplete bias. Okay. So we now go to our question for the day, question number 4. So we're told that the level of explored levels of cyber smart among students from 4 universities in Lusaka are shown below. UNILAS, Cavendish, and the following is that. Okay. We're being asked to identify what is our target population and what is our population size. So what is the target population from there?
We add all the target population. I think it's the issue of adding 50 plus 45 plus 40 plus 35, isn't it?
Yes, that is 170. That's the population size. But the target population are all students enrolled from the 4 universities, which is UNILAS, Cavendish, Apex, and CRESP. So we need to differentiate population size and the target population. Target population at the university is it by name. Population size is when you total them up, right? 4 marks. Identify the key variables in table 2 and separate a sample code book for the mentioned identified variables. Okay, so in this context, let us identify the key variables. The key variables there we have what? The university name, the year of study. What else is there? Cyber scam experience, the source of cybersecurity knowledge, and exposure level. Are we together? Then those are the key variables that you can see there. I repeat, what are the key variables that you are seeing there? The key variables are university name, you have the year of study, you have the cyber scam experience, the source of cybersecurity, and exposure level. Then we go to coding. We can code them. How can we code them? A simple code book will be as follows. So you can put the variable that you want to look at. Maybe the university, the name of the university. You can say 1 for UNILAS, 2 for Cavendish, 3 for Apex, 4 for CRESP. Then type of data, this is categorical data. Year of study, you're going to look at the academic year. So first year 1, second year 2, third year. So this is ordinal data. Then we look at the scam experience. It's a scam encounter experience. 1 scammed, 2 not scammed, 3 nearly scammed. So this is nominal data. Then the knowledge, the source of knowledge. 1 training, 2 friends, 3 on, 4 experience. This is nominal data. Then we go to exposure level based on the score chart. So we have the actual number. What's your exposure level? So this is how coding is done. Okay. Then we go to our question number C. We use the sample arrived. If you use a sample table to arrive at the sample size, quantitative research, common concepts should include population size, confidence level, margin of error. Briefly explain the meaning of these 3 concepts. So I taught you in the notes what is the meaning of those ones. What is the population size, confidence level? So when you're dealing with those terminologies,
The total number of the population size actually, which is 170.
okay.
Then confidence level. This indicates how confident you are and that your sample reflects the field. Okay, something like that.
Okay.
Confidence is what you what you believe in. So basically it comes at 95%, isn't it?
Yes. So it indicates the level of certainty that the sample reflected through population parameters. The sample size is the total number of individuals to meet the criteria for inclusion in the study. So that's that. All right.
Yes.
Are you understanding? Is it making sense? Are we getting somewhere?
Yes. I'm trying, yes.
All right, okay.
Trying.
So target population, we have already talked about it. Is what? It is people that we are targeting for the study. Then we talked about the code book and how to come up with it. And now we're being asked to explain the important aspects. Okay, population size, confidence levels, the degree of certainty. We have 90, 95, 99. And what is margin of error? What is margin of error?
If my confidence is 95, margin of error should be
It's acceptable range of error in the results.
5%. Yes.
Okay, so the margin of error just gives you the acceptable error. It shows you the range within which the true mean must lie. Okay, so we end here. We're done with the paper. This is where it ends. Okay,
Ends at question 4.
no, for the session. So actually, there are two more questions which we'll look at in the next
So we have 5 and 6.
session. Yes, so we'll look at them in our
Okay.
next session. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.